Heart of Inmost Light has stolen my heart these past few weeks, and I think it might steal your heart too. This is an exotic chess piece for Titans that's really fascinating, and I think it might become a top pick on December 7th after all the nerfs to ability and super regeneration speeds come through. Today, we're going to examine everything about Heart of Inmost Light, everything from the context it exists in within Destiny PvP to all of the little details like how fast and how much it buffs each of your abilities, and I'll share some tips for using it to its full potential, which I think is really rewarding and moreover just really fun. So first up, how does this thing work? Well, when you use one ability, Heart of Inmost Light empowers the other two for 10 seconds, which means they'll recharge much faster, and they'll also do more damage if it's a grenade or a melee, or take more damage if it's your barricade. The sort of gimmicky way a lot of people think about this exotic right now is like, oh, that's that one-shot sticky nade exotic, right? Well, it can do that, but it has so much more going for it too. Right now, it's quite good, but it's still kind of finicky, and it doesn't work entirely as Bungie has been wanting it to work, interestingly, but coming up in December, it's getting changed. So I'm making this video now, knowing full well that Heart of Inmost Light is getting changed in a couple weeks, but I've always been fascinated by this exotic since it came out in the Forsaken expansion a couple years ago, and I've loved the delightful sort of backseat yet powerful and flexible role it can take within any build. After using it for a good chunk of time, going flawless with it a couple times, and just using it in all PvP activities just because it's so fun, I've come to love it as I knew I always would and just never really had the time for. And so I want this video to exist as a nice sort of anchor of comparison for whatever it becomes down the road. Basically, we'll always have Season of the Lost, Heart of Inmost Light. Love you. Alright, let's get into some more detail about how exactly Heart of Inmost Light, or Hoyle, works, and then let's talk about its context within Destiny PvP and how to use it. I tested Hoyle with my friend Carbon. There he is, what a guy. And I found some numbers for cooldowns and damage. I did all my testing at 6 resilience, 6 discipline, and 6 strength. So let's say your resilience is tier 6, your barricade would normally recharge in 28 seconds. With Heart of Inmost Light, when you pop your barricade, it'll recharge in 19 seconds because it gives you that buff called Empowered whenever you use an ability, which means your abilities are going to recharge more quickly. Now, the way this works is a little odd. As soon as you pop your barricade, it's an empowered barricade, which means it has 800 hit points instead of the normal barricade's 600 hit points. But for the other abilities, you have to pop some sort of other ability first to empower those and make them strong, but with barricades, you just get the boosted version right away. In my experience, this beefy barricade is often something enemies don't expect because it takes longer to shoot the barricade down, and it can oftentimes give you those few more seconds you need to get a revive in trials or contest a capture point. With barricades, like I said, you just get the souped up version right on popping it, but with grenades, you need to use your barricade first, then it buffs your grenade and reduces your cooldowns. So that's how Titans are getting those one-shot grenades on you. They're popping their barricades, which for 10 seconds upgrades their barricade HP, reduces all ability cooldowns for them, and of course boosts their grenade damage, so sticky grenades can one-shot kill, or basically any grenade for that matter. As for the timings, if you have 6 discipline, your grenade would normally recharge in 51 seconds, but with Heart of Inmost Light, it recharges in 28 seconds, which is extremely fast. Grenades get really interesting with Hoyle. You can of course go with fusion grenades on solar titans, particularly bottom tree hammers, which means you'll create a sunspot where you get your kill, inviting you to keep pushing further and further forward to get those sunspot boosts to ability regeneration, not to mention the massive damage sunspots do to opponents, and of course the instant health and shields you get back on any solar ability kill. So bottom tree hammers is just amazing on Hoyle. You could go with thermite grenades for empowered grenades, which do more damage and have a tiny bit wider radius, which isn't so bad, or more interesting to me personally, the empowered incendiary grenade, which also becomes a one-hit kill if someone is close enough to it, doing 195 damage just from the initial blast. But it also increases the damage ticks to about 8 damage per tick, 5 ticks total, which is honestly a ton of damage even if someone doesn't die to the initial blast. And then you can get a sunspot out of that too. I think any sort of frag grenade feels remarkably good to use in Destiny, and bouncing those frags off of floors and walls is just unbelievably satisfying. There's nothing quite like it. It's kind of like a fighting lion-y kind of joy I feel when I throw a perfect frag. Now, empowered solar fusion grenades are great, but on Sentinel, the empowered sticky nades are terrible, and I don't recommend using them since they frequently don't one-shot kill even when you're empowered, and that unreliability is just awful. If you go with void wall grenades, they kill just a little bit faster than their non-empowered counterparts, which is fine and really good if you're trying to unload high DPS on a stationary target, but the boost to damage from the empowered buff isn't much of a time to kill reduction, since it's just like 1 or 2 less ticks of damage required to get a kill. And I think if you're playing Sentinel, you should instead direct your attention to suppressor grenades, which are one of the best reasons to play Sentinels, or Titans entirely as a class for that matter, because suppressor grenades are just that good. They take enemies out of supers, they do damage, and they prevent anyone from using abilities or double jumping for 10 seconds, which is actually pretty long. If you get some enemies suppressed and you happen to have an empowered suppressor when you do it to do more damage, you have a huge opening with which to aggress and win an engagement. I think suppressors are definitely the best void grenade. But my favorite class to run Heart of Inmost Light on is by far the Striker class, the Arc Titan class, which has access to flashbangs, the most goated nade in all of Destiny. It checks so many boxes for me. It's a frag grenade, so it's super satisfying to throw and to bounce. It takes away enemy radar and HUD, it impairs enemy vision, and it does acceptable damage too. When it's empowered, the vision impairment and the time that the radar is gone isn't changed, but it does more damage, which makes it feel really nice. And regardless, taking away enemy radar at all is amazing because it can create some incredible opportunities for amazing plays or flanks to catch people off guard. As for pulse grenades, they suck when they're empowered. They just do more damage, but it barely changes the time to kill, and they're nowhere near as fun or opportunity granting as flashbangs or, oh my heart, empowered lightning grenades. These things become incredibly powerful, dealing 195 damage in a very, very generous radius. I'm not quite sure how exactly it happens, but I think because lightning grenades already have a wide cone in which they do damage, and damage from the empowered buff is just a flat increase to the whole grenade, it means that being anywhere in that radius of damage, which is quite wide, is going to do considerable damage to your enemies. So you have a pretty wide range with which you can get that 195 lightning grenade damage, which kills almost all opponents in one hit. Once you get good at it, you can totally start placing them in really specific spots and start one-hit killing people all the time. I absolutely love lightning grenades for how they feel to throw, the skill shot element of them, and how satisfying it is to get that huge boom immediate kill when you place one in just the absolute perfect spot. It's surgical. They're extremely good, and I've had them alongside me in really sweaty PvP matches, and they've come in clutch, and I think they're the best grenade choice for Hoyle users, for the fun factor and the efficacy factor in endgame PvP. That said, an empowered incendiary, suppressor, or flashbang is probably equally as good in the right hands. All in all, grenades become really fearsome when you empower them, and the fact alone that Hoyle invites you to learn how to get good with grenades means you're going to grow much better at placing grenades for some awesome plays, which is a great skill to take into any build. But Heart of Inmost Light doesn't stop with the chonky barricade or the super nades. When you start involving melee abilities, this thing becomes interestingly complex and disgustingly fun. If you melee someone when you're empowered, it does 110 damage, which is 10% higher than the 100 damage of a normal melee. Nice, but not much. However, if you blend your melee ability with one of your other abilities, things get nutty. Here are the permutations of abilities to become empowered times 2. As you can see, grenading then barricading does not give it to you, nor does melee then grenade, melee then barricade, nor barricade then grenade. The only two that are going to give you the empowered times 2 buff are the grenade and then using your melee, or a barricade and then using your melee. Essentially, just think of it this way: if you use 2 abilities in a row and your second one is a melee, they'll be empowered times 2. Empowered times 2 means that your buff timer will refresh back up to 10 seconds and continue giving you faster ability recharge, but it doesn't make your abilities recharge faster than a times 1 empowerment. It just gives you more time in that empowered state to get your abilities cooling down faster or to do something with your barricade, grenade, or melee. But the most exciting thing about Empowered times 2 is that Heart of Inmost Light gives you some juicy, heavy, spicy grenades that absolutely slap. These things are going to do like 254 damage a piece, which is well above the like 190-ish damage points required to kill the average Guardian in one hit, so you get anywhere near an Empowered times 2 nade and you're dead on the spot. Pulse grenades become a 2-tap, void walls become a 2-tick, and stasis crystals with fissures do 93 damage per crystal explosion. That's a ton. As for fusion grenades, flashbangs, and suppressors, they do that 254 damage per piece, and lightning grenades also do the 254 still with their absolutely massive cone, meaning you're almost guaranteed a kill if an enemy gets close to a lightning grenade. It's so damn fun. I cannot get enough of this thing. Okay, so that's all the detail about how Heart of Inmost Light works, so now you got the meat of this thing, let's add some potatoes and carrots and get a stew going here. What I mean by all these superlated words is that we need to talk about some context around Heart of Inmost Light. In case you missed it, Bungie announced that going forward your subclass abilities are going to regenerate more slowly in the Crucible. This means you'll have less class abilities, grenades, melees, and supers, and I think this is a really good thing to help PvP feel more balanced and hold people's attention for much longer, since fights will be more reliably dictated by those who have mastered their primary weapons, positioning, and teamwork, which leaves the outcome of fights in your hands a lot more and not so much a dice roll. That means when you win and when you lose, it'll probably feel more like the outcome of a fight was fair and deserved, rather than just who happened to have an ability up. Of course, that's assuming connections are working in your favor. Oh! What the f was that? Look, I'm not saying abilities or those who enjoy them are bad. I enjoy them too, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to win and working as hard as you can to make that happen. And nothing wrong with just playing for fun regardless of the outcome. It's a game, for crying out loud. Play however you want. That said, there are some abilities in Destiny that do feel much stronger than others and easier to win with. You can play around them and do your own thing, but sometimes you just can't win against some opponents when you're just using any old thing and you have to switch to the meta to win. And I think at some point the community's patience really becomes drained by this and change is needed. Fortunately, that's exactly what we can expect in the near future, or at least a strong push towards that goal of balance and replayability, so I'm happy to see it and I'm looking forward to a bright future. But even now, the sandbox is doing great, except for a few naughty boys. Now, I do think abilities dominating Destiny's PvP sandbox less often is certainly something to be hopeful about, since there is so much fun to be had with primary gunplay, positioning, and teamwork, but that doesn't change the fact that abilities are fun too. They make up a part of Destiny's PvP identity, and they'll certainly still be remarkably powerful even after their cooldowns are nerfed. Even today, we can see how powerful abilities with low cooldowns still are, like one grenade can easily change the whole course of a fight even if you rarely have it charged up. And in many cases, if you build into grenades, you can dominate a lobby. I've done this many times with Top Tree Stormcaller, simply getting myself to tier 7 discipline, tossing on grenade kickstart and double bomber mods, and then in trials I can easily have a grenade for like every single encounter, which cancels out a ton of enemy teamwork because the grenades chain damage between enemies over and over again, refunding me grenade energy every time, which is just nuts. Top Tree Stormcaller grenades with Arc Web are obviously remarkably powerful, but that's not even getting into how potent and generous something like Shatter Dive can be. So when it comes down to it, abilities are remarkably strong today, and they will be after the nerfs coming up too. They'll just be a bit harder to build into and get as frequently, but they'll still be able to turn the tide of a fight, and they'll be a really powerful tool in your kit for, well, winning, even if you don't have them as much as you used to. This is the context that Heart of Inmost Light exists within. It is an exotic today that gives you more abilities, makes all those abilities much better, and creates a generous, positive feedback loop that, in the right hands, is pretty darn scary in PvP. And even after the nerfs, it's still going to be scary and really powerful. I've gone flawless with it a few times now and gotten to 5500 in the survival playlist with Heart of Inmost Light, although I did start at like 2500 points this season from goofing around with other builds, but Hoyle took me through those last 3000 points, and I wouldn't have wanted anything else on my waxy little Titan body. The thing with Hoyle is that it has always been good, and it's been one of those really unique sleeper picks for PvP, well, forever. It's one of those things where it wasn't necessarily easy to use or flashy or rewarding for years, looking at you, Dune Marchers, but it was always just one of those exotics hanging out on the sidelines in the A tier, super strong, super fun, that you'd never know about if you never took off the speed boots. It gives you multiple abilities for actually every PvP encounter you find yourself in. It synergizes with handling boosts like Surplus, which are actually really potent these days, and it gives you some amazing offensive and defensive tools from your beefy barricade to your absolutely monstrous grenades, whether they're single or double empowered. I love Heart of Inmost Light, and I'm so excited to get to know it more next season and into the future, even after its nerfs that Bungie just announced. Going forward, Heart of Inmost Light will have those ability charge time boosts reduced by 50%, which is a chunk, but they're still probably going to feel pretty dang nice. But on top of that, Heart of Inmost Light actually got a buff, since that empowered ×2 buff you can get is now going to be easier and more reliable to get when you use 2 abilities in a row. And this is super interesting because apparently this entire time that empowered ×2 stack was a bug, which I think is pretty funny and cool and super fun, but the fact they decided to make it an actual reliable feature of this exotic is awesome. Can't wait to see how Hoyle changes, and I think it's still going to be great. Now, because Destiny PvP players have become accustomed to having abilities active pretty dang frequently from encounter to encounter in PvP, I think Hoyle is going to fill a gap in our hearts that we really don't realize is there. It's kind of like how spread shotguns caught all those nerfs, and then slug shotguns slid in and filled that role that a lot of people were looking for of a snappy 8-meter OHK tool. Heart of Inmost Light after the nerfs is probably going to make you feel like you're playing much closer to what the past has felt like, where you have at least one ability for every fight, but on top of that, as you chain empowerment from ability to ability, you're going to be working with souped up melees, grenades, and barricades, which is huge, honestly. It means you can rely on handling boosts from perks like Surplus more often. It means you can create openings for yourself offensively and defensively more. And I think you'll just feel like you have a Heart of Inmost Light. I'm sorry. Okay, final thing on the docket, some quick tips for playing Hoyle to its fullest effect. You can, of course, simply use it mindlessly and just have your abilities charged up all the time from it, but if you want to strategize, here are the main tips. First up, try to get at least 6 resilience, discipline, and strength, ideally higher though. I run 70 resilience, 100 recovery always, 70 discipline, and 80 strength, which is more strength than I need, but whatever. The best thing by far is having high resilience. If you have at least 7 and you put on 2 utility kickstart mods, you can chain your barricade back to back with no downtime, which can be really useful, but I have to recommend resilience higher than tier 7. As you go, be mindful of which abilities you have up and how soon until you get the next one. Hoyle is going to force you to practice keeping an eye on your ability cooldowns, which is a great skill to have. One of the big things will be noticing when you have your grenade charged up and when you have your barricade charged up. More than likely your barricade will be up a lot, so you can work on popping it back to back to get your grenade charged. Then you can start looking for strategic areas to place your grenade. Assuming you're using lightning grenades, you can start noticing where you need to place them on surfaces to block areas off and hit enemies around corners. Or if you're using one of the frags like flashbang suppressors or incendiaries, which are all amazing, you need to start practicing how to bounce them off the ground and the walls so you can get them to explode right where you want them after a bounce, and with proper timing too. If you're going with fusion grenades, you'll need to start getting used to how the tracking feels and how to throw it so it arcs right into an enemy's path. These skills will only come with practice, so don't be sad if it doesn't go well in the beginning. Just pick one grenade you want to get used to and stick with it for a while. I find lightnings are my favorite, but you do you. After you've gotten an understanding of how to effectively place grenades and your resilience is high enough that you can chain barricades back to back until your other abilities come up, you can start thinking about double empowerment. This will happen when you use 2 abilities in a row and the last one is a melee, assuming you're watching this before the patch. Afterwards, we'll see how it feels, but it'll probably be even easier to get double empowered. I find the best way to do this is place a cheeky barricade right up close to your enemies and do that classic Titan thing where you just stand behind it, smiling, inviting enemies to shoot at you while teammates capitalize on your distraction. Enemies will shoot your barricade, which takes a while to destroy, and oftentimes they'll get close to you and then you can smack one of them with your melee and become double empowered, giving you a super grenade with which you can kill actually anyone. And this is actually more likely than you think. People oftentimes attack barricades and all you have to do is smack them once and you're double empowered. If you place a barricade as someone is charging you, it's pretty likely they'll actually accidentally touch it and they'll die in a single melee because of all the damage the barricade does. Also, thanks to melee desync and rubber banding, you'll probably get a free kill because it'll literally be impossible to hit you when you're meleeing and rubber banding all over the place. Here's a classic gameplay loop that happens all the time for me with Hoyle and frequently results in success. I get up close and personal and place a barricade, and then the enemies are focused on shooting it or looking at me. I throw an empowered grenade that one hit kills one of them or at least injures a couple, and then they back up and I'm free to push and use my melee ability to get a kill. With knockout and frontal assault on the bottom tree striker, this is pretty dang easy. I'm then getting health regeneration, I have increased damage, and I am empowered ×2, and I'm just a menace to society at that point. In the event enemies decide to push my first barricade at the beginning of this whole scenario, all I have to do is pepper them with a tiny bit of damage, or my barricade will just do that for me, and then I use my melee ability and I'm empowered ×2, so I have an extremely deadly grenade for the next opponents. That gameplay loop is one that I go through a lot, and it's a classic example of how Heart of Inmost Light can chain abilities back to back and just let you steamroll enemy teams. Of course, throughout all this scenario, since you'll have the enemy's attention on you and you'll be doing opening damage with your grenade, it's imperative that you're calling out enemy positions and damage numbers to your teammates so they can work with you as the main distraction. You don't have to ape in for every scenario, but these really strong opening abilities are going to give you some great potential opportunities, or at least it's going to flush out enemy abilities, which is excellent because then shortly later, you'll have an ability and your opponent won't. I would say those are the most important skills for a Hoyle Master to have. Good positioning, great grenade throwing skills, and a watchful eye for their ability combos available, all the while communicating to their team how well they are distracting opponents and creating openings. If you're smart and staying alive, you're going to be a really powerful, aggressive anchor for your team. Look, I love Hoyle. It works everywhere, makes you a steadfast and powerful little titan, and it's just super fun. I think it is such a unique balance of thoughtfulness and no thoughtfulness, since you can certainly choose to use your abilities really wisely to chain them back to back and get some amazing grenades rolling, or you can just totally forget about it and just play your game however you want, and Hoyle will be there supporting you the whole way through without you having to think at all. It's just perfect. What's more, it works in every single Titan build because it's a neutral game exotic, which really tickles my fancy because it's exactly the kind of thing where you could eventually get a zero wasted stat points build, ideally with a nice spread and some flexibility, and just like vibe out forever and never have to take it off. And I crave that beyond belief. I love zero wasted stat point builds. I only have a few, but for those that I do have, they feel amazing, and I really hope I can get one day with Heart of Inmost Light. That would make me feel very peaceful and happy. All in all, Hoyle has my heart. It feels like such a reliable, classic, and honorable way to just have fun and win. Like just a really nice, reliable car that's always there for you no matter what. Nothing too fancy, just a good, honest workhorse that you can truly take anywhere. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye. Wait, what? That's amazing.
I am Sterling.
I am the one true Titan.